what we're living in right now is the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire never went away. Yeah, it just morphed and got and the names changed and everything. But you can see that Europe, which is the base of the Roman Empire, basically colonized and controlled the rest of the world. There's only very few places, I think you can't see it really well, but Korea and Japan and a couple of islands in there. I think right there, I don't know what that is, but yeah, there's only very few places in the world where the Roman Empire doesn't control. And so, yes, going back to what you're saying, one big happy family. Okay, what's your name? Sorry, Jez mentioned. Right, that all the presidents are related. What they did was when they conquered a country, they would give that country independence, but they would leave their bloodline behind to manage it. Okay, America was never independent. They left their bloodline behind, and as said, all the presidents are of that bloodline, and they're managing the country for this bloodline. So, just to underline the point I was trying to make earlier about, it's not about race, it's not about colour. I just did a little video.
White is not a skin colour. It is an exclusive membership of a secret society club. There are pale-skinned people who aren't considered white, and there are dark-skinned people who have been classified as white.
I rejected my white classification publicly for the first time in 1987, in February. A white coworker came to me and told me right after the function, he said, "You have nothing to do with these people, you have a history and a culture. These people came from the jungle, you have nothing to do with them. These people lie and steal. When I see one of them in my neighborhood, I call the police."
White is a caste system, created and maintained by those who have placed themselves at the top. And while it might seem that the lighter skinned you are, the higher up the caste structure you'll be, those in the higher echelons know that it's really about bloodline and DNA. The benefits of membership seem very desirable: privilege, wealth, celebrity, power. But these worldly things that this bloodline controls are just superficial, transitory, and illusory. Nonetheless, many people think they are or want to be in the club. But as George Carlin says, that's because you can only be a full platinum member by bloodline, by virtue of having the serpent DNA. Switch on the television and you'll see others of a less pure bloodline who have managed to gain bronze or useful idiot membership. And you can fantasize that if somebody discovers that you can sing well or lie to a camera, that maybe you can upgrade to a higher degree, ignorant of the fact that they have had to prove that they're a particular type of ruthless psychopath, literally willing to sign a contract in blood and sacrifice their granny for scraps off the elite's table. The rest assume that because you look like you're a member, that you automatically are one, and so act accordingly. But you have just been brainwashed into believing that you are part of their club, in the same way that you might refer to our military, or say, my team scored a goal. Well, you don't have a military, and it's not your team. You're really just pawns, supporting and perpetuating the caste system, accepting the unspoken privileges, and collaborating in the denial of the same to black people. Blissfully unaware that the real white bloodline considers you as expendable as those who you believe have a lower social status. If you're not a member of the elite families, then it doesn't matter how pale your skin is or how blonde your hair. You will never be white.
So that's just trying to give you the idea that it's not about race, it's not about colour, it's all about bloodline. And this bloodline is at the moment in this process of trying to depopulate the entire world, using all these methods down here. Yeah, and I think everyone's aware of that. Everybody aware of that?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. We were given rules to be here, okay? But we're in a society where all those rules have been reversed. Yeah, everything that's in the Ten Commandments have been legalized. You know, people can legally kill. People are allowed to lie and steal. Yeah, every day on the roads, you know, people in uniforms are allowed to steal. But yeah, everything in this society has been reversed.
If you study the human rights, you get deeper into that, you find that it is a complete reversal of the Ten Commandments.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, legalese as well, that's a whole nother topic. But yeah, we're in a completely satanic society. Does everybody get that sense that you know, it's a thoroughly evil society that we're living in and being forced to try and participate in? And I don't know if you're aware that across America they've started putting up statues of the Baphomet. Has anybody heard this story? Yeah, they've literally started putting up statues of Satan and allowing Satan worship in schools and all sorts of places. Yeah, we're going down that path very quickly indeed. So we're still all in slavery. Yeah, when obvious chattel slavery was ended, what they did was bring in this new type of slavery. It was called sharecropping. And I don't know if you're aware of how it works, but what the newly freed slaves were told were, okay, you're free now, but what we're going to do is I'm going to advance you some seed, some tools, some materials, and maybe some horses and whatever, okay? And you can go and, grow your own food and stuff. And at the end of the year, we'll split the profits, and you just pay me back what you owe me for all the things I advanced you. But it was always worked out that they never ever managed to pay their debt, just because they made it so it worked out that way. And it was so successful that it was actually rolled out everywhere. And this is where we are right now. Okay, of the money that you earn, something like 95% to 97% of it goes in taxes in one form or another. Yeah, so that you never ever progress. Yeah, the odd person might make it, and if they do, they get invited to the club. Simple as that. And if they say yes, well, they join. As long as they do as they're told, they join up and they become part of this elite club as useful idiot. But if you say no, then your business goes down the tubes. Kind of like Richard Branson. Remember a while back, Virgin just started to tank. Do you remember that? It was quite a while back. And then all of a sudden, when Richard Branson decided to play ball, then it went up like a rocket. But yeah, we're still under slavery. It's just economic slavery. Now, one of the biggest enslavements comes from this religion. Okay, it was all created by the same people. All religions throughout the world come from the same people. And this is how they enslaved your mind. I know this might be a bit hard for some people, because I know some people were into Christ and stuff, but this is from what I've gleaned from reading the Bible, over and over and over again. That the New Testament was added to the original book. Yeah, the original book wasn't called the Old Testament; it was called the Book of Remembrance. Right? The Romans renamed it the Old Testament so they could give a New Testament. Right? So, but since the word testament means statement of truth, just you try entering a new statement of truth that contradicts the old one in a murder trial and see how far that gets you. Yeah, it literally doesn't make any sense. But what it does do is it supplies you with a new God. Yeah, and sort of new idols to worship. Wooden crosses and statues and stuff.
That's
but
not what the original Christians did.
Sorry, who said that?
paganism.
I'm also, yeah, that's right, but I'm also talking about Christianity, which the clue is in the title, yeah, Christ. Yeah, if you worship Christ, and again, everyone's free to believe whatever they want. Right? I'm just telling you what I've found. If you worship Christ, then you're putting another God before the Most High, in contravention of the first commandment. That's the way I see it. Okay, and I've been, when I started reading the Bible, I did not have a horse in the race. I came at it as a newbie, thinking, okay, whatever the truth is, I'm going to go with that. Okay. Now, if Jesus was in the Old Testament, if Jesus was part of this, then I would be a Jesus worshipper now. But I can't be, because, as I said, reading the Old Testament, very clear, no other gods before me. And in this culture, we're a victim of word magic. Okay? With the right use of words, you can be fooled into doing something you wouldn't normally do, and think you're doing something completely different. Yeah? It works, hypnotism works the same way. You can think you're eating an apple, but it's an onion. Yeah? Right? It's the same thing. So this is what's happening. Word magic. Yeah? It says, do not put any gods before me. Yeah? But they give you an explanation that, oh no, if you worship the Most High through Jesus, right, then that's the right way. But what are you actually doing? You're worshipping Jesus. Yeah, you might think that you're worshipping the Most High through him, but what you're actually doing is just like you're eating the onion.
So you're saying that nowhere in the Old Testament predicted coming of the Messiah?
Well, this is the thing. I didn't want to really go there, but okay. I had no horse in the race, so I was accepting. But what I did was I started posting what I was believing on Facebook, and predictably, Christians would come to me and say, "But what about this?" So I go, "Okay, give me half an hour. Let me just read through." So I'd go and actually read where they were pointing to, and how you approach it. Okay, they would say something like, "He was born of a virgin." Yeah. So just like if you opened Fight Club in the middle of the book, and it says he punched him in the face. Okay, well, who? So you've got to go back and find where it first says he, and then it will say, oh yeah, Tyler Durden did this, and he, and so on. And that's how you figure out who who it's talking about. So that's what I did. I just applied the rules of understanding a book to this book. So where it says he would be born of a virgin, I just go back a few chapters and see where it first says he, and then it says who he's talking about. So when you do that, it says, well, it's the children of Israel. Yeah, well, I'm not using that as an example. What I'm saying, you go back and you find it. That's who he's talking about. In this case, he was born of a virgin. It was a sign to King Ahaz, who was being attacked by the Syrians and Israel, and the Most High said, "Oh, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. It's not going to happen. Ask for a sign." And Ahaz said, "No, I'm not going to ask you a sign." And the Most High said, "Well, I'm going to give you a sign. A virgin," but the word virgin isn't virgin, it means a young woman. Young woman will be given, will conceive, and his name will be called Emmanuel, which means God is with us. Yeah, and by the time that child is old enough to know between good and evil, those two kings will be dead. That's the story. And in that chapter, it was fulfilled. The two kings were dead, and that's it. King Ahaz dies, and that's the end. The whole prophecy is done. Okay? And you can't apply that later on, a few hundreds of years later on.
What about Daniel chapter 9, verses 22 to 24?
Well, you know what? I can't sort of just reel off it. I'm not one of those people who can just reel off scripture like that and figure out what.
It mentions the 70-week prophecy and Christ coming in the last.
Okay, I know we don't want to go into let's prove, but Daniel is actually talking about Zerubbabel and the building of the second temple.
Yes,
It's not about Jesus coming and so on and so on.
It talks about it being ended as well.
Sorry? Yes, it did. It did get ended because sorry about this Bible talk here. It did get ended because the enemies basically petitioned the king to stop building the temple, and the king said, right, stop, hold on, stop, and they were cut off. It's talking about the time, that they're talking about. They're not talking about something in the future. And every time somebody pointed me at something, I went, hold on, let me read it and let me see. And I looked, and if it said, yes, there's a Jesus, I would be...
Prophecy, it must be future.
Yes, it's future for that time.
Yeah, I agree.
And it was fulfilled in that time. And when you put this again to a Christian apologist, they'll say, oh, it's a dual prophecy. Well, where does that come in? Where does it say that all prophecies are dual? They come up with, again, word magic, so that, oh yeah, it explains it. I'm not going to go into this. I'm not going to go into this. I'm not going to go into this because this is detracting from... I'm not going to go into this because this is detracting from the story I'm trying to tell. Okay.
Do you know that the Ten Commandments are Egyptian in origin? The original, the 12 negative confessions.
There's that, but you know what I found while researching, and my current research is in languages right now, yeah, looking at Paleo-Hebrew, and it turns out that Paleo-Hebrew is the original language, okay, and the hieroglyphics come from the Paleo-Hebrew, but yeah, again, that's a totally different subject, okay. So, as I said, the New Testament supplies a new God to worship, okay, and it also teaches you slave doctrine. Be a good slave, obey your master. Treat him as you would serve this new Christ God. Turn the other cheek, love your enemy. Yeah, it's slave doctrine. So yeah, again, this might be hard, but Jesus is a fabrication. The Trinity is a pagan concept. Okay. It was there before Christianity. The Romans were actually sun worshippers. Yeah, so that's why Christians worship the sun, as in the sun. Okay, one sort of viewpoint is that every time you see Jesus, you see the halo around him. Yeah, well, what you're actually worshipping is the sun behind him and not the sun in front. Yeah, that's one viewpoint. It's not something I'm saying. Picture, this face that you're seeing on screen here, is actually a chap called Cesare Borgia, one of the Borgia crime family. He was a ruthless tyrant and a paedophile and a nasty piece of work. But his father, who was the Pope Alexander, basically had Leonardo da Vinci paint all depictions of this character as his son. So the face isn't real. But yeah, I've gone through that. I say worshipping Jesus breaks the first two commandments. So in Genesis, it tells you that these Israelites were going to go into captivity and affliction for 400 years. Well, the transatlantic slave trade started in 1619. 400 years on from then is in 2 years' time.
Surely it was a reference to the time in Egypt.
No, because they weren't in affliction and slavery for 400 years. They were in affliction for the life of Moses. Yeah, they were guests, honoured guests in Egypt up until the time that the new Pharaoh came in. They weren't in slavery and affliction. So this is the slavery where the curses of Deuteronomy 28 applies. Yeah, and that started in 1619. This is why the New World Order is racing ahead, not caring that we know about it, not caring that we can see it, because they're running out of time. The end of slavery is approaching. Yeah, and they have to have their systems in place, yeah, so that they can continue it. but they won't. It won't happen because, you know, the Book of Remembrance isn't just a book about, you know, past history. It's a book about future history and present history. Yeah, and it's already been written. Yeah, they are not going to succeed. The real world reference to this is that there was a book called Making. It was a letter, the Willie Lynch letter, The Making of the Slave, which it starts off saying, if you follow my methods, and lynching was his method. That's where you get the name lynching from, Willie Lynch. If you follow my methods, you'll have a subdued slave race for 300 years. He specifically said 300 years. He wrote this in 1712. Okay, so he knew.
Who was Willie Lynch?
He was a Caribbean slave owner, and he developed ways of psychologically afflicting the slaves so that they would be subdued. And as I said, lynching was one of them. So as I said, the end of slavery approaches. And Great Britannia is no longer the great nation promised to Abraham. It's no longer Britannia because the people of the covenant aren't here, right, in great part. This is now England, or Angleland, Angel Land, the land of the fallen angels. And Anglish is literally reversed Hebrew. Okay, this is my my research now about languages, and English is literally is a backwards language. Okay, Hebrew reads right to left. Obviously, English reads left to right. Has anybody heard of somebody called David Oates?
Yeah.
Yeah, reverse speech. It's really incredible when you actually say listen to a speech from Trump, say, yeah, and he's saying one thing, you reverse his speech, and out of the gibberish will come a complete phrase that will tell you that he's saying the opposite. Yeah, language is more a lot more incredible than we can even imagine. That's going to be my next talk when I've finished all my research. But there's more going on. It's not just obvious like we think it is, but literally, English is a reverse language. You try and say something in it, you know, with an intention, but the frequencies that you put out are the opposite. So, you know, language is very powerful, has physical effects in the world. But unless you pronounce the words properly, yeah, you don't have the effect. So English is a reverse language which is being rolled out over the entire world because they want everybody to be disempowered. Yeah. But yeah, so that's where we are. The end of slavery is approaching, and you know we're getting ready for it. And
Facebook now, so there's no chance.
There's no chance. No, yeah, but they control Facebook, but still.
Yeah, well, no,
but that's it. We're no longer.
Stuff now.
Hmm?
We know stuff now. We can get it out there.
Yeah, but this is what the prophecy is saying. At the end of this, we're all going to start waking up. Yeah, and this is exactly what we're doing. This is what this is right now. This is a process of us waking up. There's things like this happening all over the world. People gathering and talking and realising that you know this has all been wrong. So that's it. You know, that's all I'm going to say. I'm sorry to go on.